Addiction took our mother slowly, rocked her through it, and sung her to sleep, sunk deep into the mattress on her bed. When her back teeth fell out, she left them on the side of the bathtub. I was 7, and I kept them in a matchbox, the missing pieces of her kept safe, so she wouldn't be lost forever. So maybe one day, we could put her back together. Our house fell down around us, and we tried our best to raise ourselves. The ceilings had water damage, and the bottom stairs had dry rot, and in the winters, the radiators would bleed rust. But it was still our house, and Annie made it a home. My sister Annie mothered me with lopsided band-aids on bruised knees and lukewarm microwave meals. She told me ghost stories, and didn't mind when I crawled into her bed later on, too scared to sleep alone. She taught me to dance, barefoot on the living room carpet, music channel on full volume on the TV, shaking our hips before they were fully grown. She always let me shower first, so the water was hot, never complaining when she had to make do with cold. She brushed my hair every day before school, even when I screamed, and hit her when she caught the tangles. Annie was dark-haired, like her father, whoever he had been, but I was blonde. Annie was desperate to be blonde too, like Marilyn Monroe, like Mom. I think she thought it would make them closer, remind Mom less of her dad. I'd give anything for her to have her hands in my hair one more time, even if it hurt. She moved to New York when I turned 18 and never came back. I still dream about her sometimes. Keeping up with our mother was impossible, and we learned from a young age we would always be left behind. It didn't make it any easier. When she was drinking light, she shone. She would wake us up at 3 a.m. with pancakes, dripping in cherry syrup. Sometimes when the weather was right, and she'd had enough being drunk alone, she would call our school up and tell them we had both come down with summer sickness and we'd drive to the beach instead. I remember being 9 years old in the back seat of the car, coming home after one of our ocean days, sucking the salt from my fingers. Annie had just dyed her hair blonde, her best friend Jane helping her bend over our kitchen sink. From behind, I couldn't tell who was mother and who was daughter, radio up and windows down blowing the sky inside. When she was drinking heavy, she'd be out all night, hair piled up like a beauty queen, eyes glazed over and ringed with glitter and black. Sometimes she'd be gone a day or two. She would never tell us when. One day we'd just wake up to an empty house and the fridge packed full, post-it note on the front with a smear of Mom's lipstick in the outline of a kiss, telling us she'd be back soon. Sometimes she'd bring guys home, filling the table with beer cans and ashtrays, smoke up to the ceiling, Mom lost in the haze. We'd sleep with pillows over our heads, trying to drown out the music that would blast until the AM, and wake up to strangers at our kitchen table in the morning, asking us where we kept the coffee. When Mom drank too little, she fell apart. She wouldn't buy food, refrigerator, a gaping hole in the wall. She'd chain smoke, leaving cigarette burns on the wallpaper up by the stairs like the walls were sick and decaying. She barely slept, walking around with blue half-moons under her eyes, knuckles raw. She would scream at the slightest thing. I remember once when I spilled a glass of juice on the couch. She looked over at me with dead eyes and dragged me off onto the carpet, and then took every single cushion off the couch and into the backyard and set them on fire. Annie went to watch a while from the window, and then sat next to me on the floor, backs pressed against the skeleton of the seats, head resting in the crater of my collarbones. When Mom drank too much was the worst. She'd laugh too loud and too long at anything and everything, until her mouth started to shake and she started crying at the breakfast table into her cereal. Annie shut down when Mom was like this, went somewhere deep inside herself where nobody could hurt her. She'd stay up until the morning watching old black and white movies on TV, whispering the lines she knew by heart like prayers. When I was 5, I'd cry when I'd find Mom passed out cold on her bed, sure she would never wake up. Annie would wipe my tears, tell me she was only sleeping just like the princesses in my storybook. We'd sit on Mom's bed together and wait for her to wake up. When we were older, I was the one who would pick Mom up off the bathroom floor again and again, and Annie would put her to bed, smoothing her hair off her face and the vomit from her mouth, changing her clothes if she'd pissed herself. Watching them then, there was no doubt that Annie was the mother now. It was October, and I was 13, Annie 16. It was a Wednesday night, and Mom had been gone for 2 days. She'd called us that morning from a payphone, voice slurring down the line, telling us she was having the best time with all her new friends, hoped we were doing fine. When she asked me if I was having a good birthday, I hung up on her. My birthday had been the day before. Annie had given me a pile of presents, strawberry lip glosses, and glittery nail polishes. I didn't ask where she'd got the money for them. I didn't care. We'd taken the bus to the beach with Jane, eaten the birthday cake she had made for me, sand getting into the frosting. It tasted like sweetness at the sea, and I savored every bite and scrape of sugar against my teeth. We watched the sun go down, Annie snapping grainy photos on her shitty Nokia as I blew out my candles, wishing over and over that Mom wouldn't come home, that she'd just stay gone this time. But that Wednesday night, me and Annie weren't speaking. Anger hung heavy between us, seeping through the floorboards. It began when she tripped at the bottom of the stairs. We'd both laughed, Annie throwing her head back, gap between her front teeth catching the light. When I'd bent to pick her up, I'd caught her breath, warm against the freckles on my cheeks. I let go of her arms, and she fell again, hitting the floor and grinning, shaking her hair from her face. Her breath was heavy with whiskey. I couldn't start picking her up too. Couldn't watch her fall again and again. Just like Mom, I knew she'd never get back up. I'd stared down at her, blonde hair fallen into her eyes, and all I could see was our mother. And then I was running, feet slamming the hallway like heartbeats turned loose. I'd run for the kitchen and tipped every bottle we had down the sink, shoving Annie back as she fought to stop me, catching liquor on her fingers as it fell. She grabbed my shoulders and made me drop the very last bottle. It smashed between us on the floor, glass shards shining like we dragged the stars out of the sky and broken them, pieces we could never put back. Outside through the open windows, the sky turned pale gold, clouds a mess of pink and cream smeared across the horizon. I cried then, watching Annie on her knees, picking up the pieces. That was Annie, always trying to fix things even when it was too late. The smell of food dragged me from my room, stomach turning traitor inside my ribcage. Annie was cooking pasta, real food not made in a microwave. She'd set the table, Tammy Wynette singing softly from the CD player, Annie gently swaying her hips as she stirred the tomato sauce, rich and warm. As we ate in silence, with every bite, I forgave her. Mom never cooked dinner, or remembered my favorite was spaghetti ever since I was a kid, or stayed sober long enough to sit up at a table. Annie wasn't Mom. We were washing the dishes when we first heard it. A moth was crawling down the inside of the pane, and I cracked the window to let it out into the dark. From the backyard came a faint sound. I tilted my head to listen as it was coming from far off, crying. I figured it was Mika, the 2-year-old next door, having a tantrum loud enough for us to catch, or maybe even Lucky Strike, the cat that junkies down the street, begging for food like he sometimes did. I always wanted to feed him when he came around, winding over my ankles, but Annie always stopped me, saying, once you started giving, they never stopped taking. Looking back, I don't think she was talking about the cat. Annie flipped the Christmas lights strung up around the porch and we sat on the plastic beach chairs watching the skies. When we were little, we'd sit outside and Annie would tell me the names of all the constellations and the stories of how they came to be hung up in the night sky. I had to grow up before I realized she made them all up as she went along. It was a game we still like to play now, making up ridiculous stories for the shapes we could pick out. Ah, yes, that one there is the Coors Light. It got there when God dropped it out of his convertible window and never picked it up, she said, nodding sagely and hiding her smile. Of course, I said, waving my hands and pointing up past the power lines. Right next to the ashtray, left there by angels on a smoke break. Yeah, they say if you wish on it, all your dreams will come true, said Annie, grinning. She stopped laughing, voice quieter, face tilted up to all those dead stars. Let's wish, Emmy. Let's wish. So we did. The sound of crying interrupted us. It was closer this time, and definitely human. We turned to each other, confused. Annie shrugged, and I squinted out into the black. It sounded like a baby, lost and tired and alone. It must be Mika, I said, slowly getting to my feet. Maybe he walked around the back? Shit, do you want to call Connie and tell her we'll bring him over? Annie didn't reply, and I sighed, rolling my eyes. Guess I'll do everything then. I stepped off the porch, grass soft against my heels. The air smelled like it might rain, fresh and clean and growing. A promise unfulfilled. M. Annie's voice was strained. I turned to her, smiling. It died on my face when I saw the look on her own. Get inside now. She was staring out into the dark, past me, opening the door with one hand behind her, fingers fumbling on the catch. I froze, barefoot in the dirt. I'd found what she was looking at. In the bushes by the back fence was a person, crouched with their knees tucked up neat under the chin, arms wrapped around legs. Their mouth hung wide, softly opening and closing as he cried. Like a child, lost in the dark. Not like a child, but as someone pretending, mimicking the sound, open and closed out in the blackness. Suddenly, they straightened, snapping upright face still hidden by the black. They were tall and thin, too thin to be a normal person. Panic made me move. Animal instincts left over from the days we lived up in the trees carrying me forward. I was faster than Annie, dragging her inside and slamming the door behind us, hearing it bounce on its hinges as I locked it. We watched as the person slowly walked towards the house, steps deliberate and long. Annie reached for my hand, holding me tight, and turned me to face her, holding my shoulders. Don't turn around, Emmy. Don't turn around. Instinctively, I started to look over my shoulder, out into the darkness. Annie grabbed my face, hard, and shook her head. I knew then she was serious. Her voice cracked, and she cleared her throat, gripping my hand tight enough to hurt, nails digging in, grounding herself. I looked down at our fingers interlocked, both of us grown from the same bones. I'm gonna call the cops, and everything is going to be... Her voice faltered, stuttering. Tears spilled over her lashes, dripping like the promise of rain. Annie never cried. Your phone's on the porch, she whispered, and bile crawled its way up my throat. Her phone was upstairs, charging. A soft tap-tap-tapping filled the silence. Annie turned to the window, eye whites showing her eyes were so wide. It was the sound of someone's forehead against a glass. Slowly, over and over, they started to speed up, faster and harder, skin meeting glass until they was slamming into the window hard enough to shake the panes. The tapping stopped, and I was about to ask Annie if I could look now when she screamed, followed by the sound of cracking glass and the loudest slam yet. Whoever was in our yard had just smashed their face hard enough into the window to break it. We ran upstairs, 2 at a time, skipping the ones caved in with dry rot on instinct. I turned behind me once, and Annie yanked my face back before I could see. The sound of broken glass echoed behind us as we made it to the bathroom, locking the door. A thin, wailing cry, like a baby calling for its mother, filled the hallway, trapped between the walls and locked doors. Annie threw her back against the door, feet jammed up against the bathtub, clutching the knife she had grabbed from the kitchen. I did the same, shoulder to shoulder. Slow footsteps started on the stairs, deliberate and casual. The crying had become mocking, almost laughter, shrill bursts of sound, and then giggles, high-pitched and abruptly stopping before starting again. The first door on the upstairs floor was my bedroom, and we heard the distinct sound of it slamming open. They were looking for us. "What the fuck is going on?" I asked Annie, not even bothering to brush away the tears that I couldn't stop falling. I watched my sister pick herself up off the floor and brace her hands on the door as we heard the sound of a second door slamming open. Mom's room. The next room on the hallway was the bathroom. Annie pulled me to my feet and handed me the knife. I shook my head and pushed it back to her, terrified of what would happen if I had to use it. Annie shoved me and pressed the knife into my hands, thumb pressing hard enough on the blade to bleed. I watched my sister's blood drip down her wrist, a winding red road, still pushing into my hands despite the pain. I took the knife. Something slammed against the wall that Mom's room shared with the bathroom. A high-pitched wail followed. I held my breath, could feel my heart beat in the base of my throat. A wild and frantic thing. "I'm gonna get the phone from my room!" I shook my head violently, about to argue. Annie clamped a hand over my mouth. I could taste the blood on her hand, salty and sweet, like birthday cake by the ocean. "Yes, I'm gonna get the phone and I'm gonna call the cops and we're going to be okay." I shook my head again. "It's the only way. When I go, I need you to lock the door and you don't open it for anything or anyone. Not for me, not for anyone. Promise me." I shook my head and Annie pressed her hand to my mouth, crushing my teeth against my lips so it made my eyes water. "Yes, promise me, Em." Something smashed in the room next door. Annie brushed the hair off my face, gently tucking it behind my ear. "Promise," she mouthed, and unlocked the door as slowly as possible, bolt scraping gently. I watched the curve of her shoulder disappear into the black hall outside, like the moon in eclipse, and then she was gone. I couldn't move or breathe for a second, and then I slammed the bolt shut, just as something bounced off the outside of the door. A high-pitched scream followed, handle rattling up and down hard enough to pop one of the screws. I watched it roll towards me on the tiles, and then silence. I sat with my back to the door, holding the knife and wishing I was holding Annie's hand instead. Still silence. Nothing but me and my lungs slowly filling the room with my breath. "Em?" came a voice through the door. I started, hands gripping the knife. "Honey, what's going on?" "Mom?" My voice cracked. "Mama, is that you?" I wrapped my arms around myself, shaking, trying to keep myself still. "Sweetie, it's okay. Just open the door. It's okay. Just let me in." The handle rattled again, gentler. "Just let me in. It's all okay." She banged on the door, and I took my handle of the bolt. "Honey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed your birthday. I'm sorry. I'm such a terrible mother. Please." Her voice broke, and she started to cry. "Just let me in, baby. I'm so sorry." I screwed my eyes shut, She sounded so sad and so lost. I just wanted her to hold me like when I was a kid, and I'd come in off the swings with a scraped knee. Maybe this time she meant it. Maybe it would all be okay. My hand found its way to the bolt again. My sister's voice came through the door, warm and gentle. "Yeah, Emily, let us in. It's all okay." My hand froze on the bolt, and I tightened my grip on the knife. Annie never called me by my full name. A hand banged on the door, handle rattling. "Emily, let us in." Annie's voice became low and guttural, followed by the same shrill giggles from before. Mom spoke now, pleading and crying, voice getting louder and louder. "Let us in, let us in, let us in." Over and over again, punctuated by her fists on the door. I thought about demons and monsters. All the bedtime stories we pray don't crawl out from under the bed. "That's not my sister, and you're not my mother," I screamed through the door, hands over my head. I climbed into the bathtub and curled in a ball, cradling myself, knife clutched to my chest. I didn't know what it was outside that door, but I knew it wasn't Annie. It wasn't the voice that yelled out when I changed TV channel, the one that sang me happy birthday, the one that told me I was smart even when I got bad grades, the one that read me stories about princesses that never wake up. It wasn't human. Bangs and yells came from downstairs, followed by the footsteps of people running. A low guttural howl ripped through the house, filling the room until I felt like I was drowning in the sound, and then the door was kicked in. I screamed, covering my eyes, waiting to die. Arms found me and lifted me from the tub, carrying me from the room. I looked at the outside of the door as I was carried downstairs. It was covered in long, scraping claw marks, dragged down to the floor. Pillows ripped apart, covered the hallway in soft down, like it had snowed inside. I watched them drift slowly as men in uniforms checked each of the rooms that looked like they had been torn apart by something feral. Outside in our driveway were police cars and an ambulance. In the middle of it all was Annie, bathed in blue and red light as it washed over her, lit up in the dark like a neon angel, face aglow. I threw myself from the cop's shoulder and ran to her, holding us both together, broken pieces and all, standing under all those constellations we made up. Gentle screaming came from the ambulance, which rocked occasionally. Annie gently turned my head away, smiling so sadly it made my chest ache as I understood. Turns out there was no demon, no wild animal or bad men trying to break in. Just Mom, out of her mind on booze and drugs and everything in between, coming to the end of a week-long binge. Something had finally broken inside her head, and this time we couldn't put her back together no matter how hard we tried. Sometimes you fall one last time, and you never get back up. Annie had seen her in the garden, blood dribbling from her mouth, track marks bulging on her forearms like unmapped roads, rail-thin and desperate for one more hit, one more fix. She'd searched the kitchen for all the drink I'd thrown away, and when she hadn't found it, had come to hunt for the stash she hid in the bathroom. She hadn't wanted me, just the drugs on the other side of the door, so high she could mimic Annie's voice almost perfectly. Turns out the real monsters are the ones that eat you alive slowly, the kind that come in a bottle or a needle, or at the end of a long list of reasons why you can't get out of bed in the morning. Sometimes, the monsters are the ones that raise you or love you the most, but it's up to you if you let them in. I need to write this down before I lose my nerve, or my mind, or both. My wife's name is Hannah. She is the kindest person I have ever known. She laughs at her own jokes before she finishes telling them. She folds the corner of book pages instead of using bookmarks, even though she knows it drives me insane. She takes exactly 4 minutes in the morning to decide what to wear and then puts on the first thing she looked at anyway. I have been married to her for 8 months. I need you to understand that I love her completely before I tell you what is in the photographs. Her name was Reina. We were together for 2 years. I was 23, she was 22, and from the outside it probably looked like any other intense young relationship. From the inside it was something else. Reina loved with a totality that was both the most extraordinary and most exhausting thing I have ever experienced. There was no halfway with her, no casual, no quiet. Everything was enormous. The good days were the best days of my life, and the bad days were disasters, and the line between them could shift in a single moment over something I hadn't even registered as significant. I want to be careful about how I describe her, because she is dead and she cannot defend herself, and I am aware that my perspective is only one perspective. What I will say is this: she needed more than I was able to give. I don't mean that as a criticism of her. I mean it as a plain statement of fact. She needed a level of certainty and presence and complete devotion that I was 23 years old and incapable of providing. And the gap between what she needed and what I had kept widening until I couldn't see across it anymore. I ended it on a Tuesday in March, 4 years ago now. She did not take it well. That is the most inadequate sentence I have ever written, and I know it, and I am going to leave it there anyway, because the details belong to her, and I am not going to put them here. What I will tell you is that 6 weeks after I ended it, I got a phone call from her sister. Reina had been found in her apartment on a Thursday morning. She had been dead since Wednesday night. I will not describe what followed. Grief that wasn't mine to claim, but that claimed me anyway. Guilt that I have carried in various forms for 4 years, and will probably carry in various forms for the rest of my life. Therapy, which helped. Time, which helped. Less than people say it does, but more than nothing. I met Hannah 2 years later. I told her about Reina on our 4th date because it felt dishonest not to. Hannah listened the way she listens to everything completely, without interruption, without judgment. When I finished, she took my hand and said, "That wasn't your fault." I did not believe her, but I loved her for saying it. We got married 14 months later on a Saturday in September, and it was the best day of my life, and I mean that without qualification or asterisk. We honeymooned in Kyoto for 10 days. The photograph started on day 2. Hannah is the photographer between us. She has a mirrorless camera she's had for years, nothing professional, just a good camera she knows how to use, and she documents everything, not obsessively, just naturally, the way some people do, finding the frame in ordinary moments. She took maybe 200 photographs in Kyoto. Gardens, temples, food. The two of us in various combinations of tired and happy and overwhelmed by beauty. On the second evening, she was going through the day's photos on the camera screen, and she made a small sound, not alarmed, just curious, and showed me one. "Look at this one," she said. "Weird light." It was a photo of me standing in front of the Fushimi Inari gates, the red torii stretching back behind me into the tree line. Good photo. Hannah has a good eye. In the upper left corner, where the path curved away into the trees, there was a smear of light, white and vaguely vertical, the shape of something standing at the edge of frame. "Lens flare," I said. "There was no sun in that direction," Hannah said. But she scrolled on, and I watched her move past it, and I told myself she was right. It was just light doing something strange. Cameras do that. I looked at the shape for another second before she scrolled. It was the right height for a person. I did not say this. There were 3 more that trip. Each one I found before Hannah did. I started checking the photos first when she handed me the camera, which I told myself was because I was interested and not because I was looking for something specific. The second, a photo of Hannah in a bamboo grove, laughing at something off-frame. The white shape again, further back between the bamboo stalks, still formless, still vertical, still the height of a person. The third, a photo of both of us taken by a stranger we'd asked a standard tourist portrait. A temple behind us, arms around each other, smiling. I looked at this one for a long time in the bathroom of our hotel room at midnight while Hana slept. The shape was closer. Still white, still without features, but closer to the frame and less smeared, more solid at the edges, like something becoming gradually more itself. I deleted this one before Hana saw it. I told myself I was protecting her from being unsettled by a camera artifact on our honeymoon. The fourth photo I also deleted. I'm not going to describe what was different about the fourth photo, except to say that by that point, it no longer looked like a smear of light. And I stood in the bathroom at 1 a.m. with my hands shaking, and I looked at my own face in the fun bathroom mirror for a long time afterward. We flew home 4 days later. I told Hana the rest of the trip was just a bad memory card. She believed me. She has no reason not to believe me. I bought her a new memory card at the airport. We have been home for 8 months. I need to tell you about the progression, because the progression is the thing that has brought me to this point, at 3 a.m. unable to sleep, writing this on my phone. Month 1 and 2, nothing. I started to believe it had been the location, something specific to that place, and that we had left it there. I slept better. I was almost normal. Month 3, Hana took photos at her work party. I checked them before she uploaded them. Third photo from the end, a group shot in a restaurant. Hana in the center, surrounded by colleagues. Far right edge of the frame. White shape. Closer than it had ever been in Kyoto. Close enough that I could see, and I want to be very precise here, the suggestion of a face. No features. Just the structure of a face. The shape a face makes. I deleted it. I said the photo came out blurry. Month 4. My brother's birthday dinner. Family photos. I checked every one. Nothing. I slept well for 3 weeks. Month 5. Hana started a project photographing our neighborhood, just walking and shooting, a hobby thing. She uploads everything to her laptop and goes through it in the evenings. I started sitting with her when she does this. She thinks it's because I'm interested in her project. In a photo of our own street, our building visible, our window on the 3rd floor, the shape was standing on the pavement, directly below our window, looking up. I said I was tired, and went to bed and lay in the dark for 4 hours. Month 6. The face had features. I don't want to write about month 6. Month 7 is when I understood that this was not random, not location specific, not a camera fault, not my mind constructing patterns from light and shadow and grief and guilt. Month 7 is when I understood that she was getting closer on purpose. And month 7 is when the first photograph appeared showing something that had not happened yet. Hana took a photo of our kitchen on a Tuesday morning. Documentary impulse, she does this, captures ordinary mornings, the coffee cups and the light. She showed it to me that evening because she liked the light in it. I looked at it for a long time. Reina was standing in the kitchen doorway. Not a smear, not a shape, not a suggestion. Standing in the doorway, fully visible from the shoulders up, the rest of her obscured by the doorframe. Her face, her actual face, the face I knew for 2 years, turned toward the camera, toward Hana, who had been holding the camera. Her expression was the one she used to make when she was deciding something. I looked at this photograph, and I felt 4 years of processed grief and managed guilt come completely undone in approximately 10 seconds. And then I noticed the other thing. On the kitchen counter in the photograph, between the coffee cups and the fruit bowl, there was a vase of white flowers. We do not own a vase of white flowers. We did not have a vase of white flowers on that Tuesday morning. I looked from the photograph to the kitchen counter, and the counter had the coffee cups and the fruit bowl, and no vase, no flowers. I checked the date stamp on the photo, Tuesday, that morning. The kitchen we were standing next to, no vase. I did not delete this one. I copied it to my own phone and deleted it from Hannah's camera, and I have looked at it every day since. 3 weeks after the kitchen photograph, I came home from work to find Hannah arranging flowers in a vase on the kitchen counter. White flowers, the same vase, the same flowers, the exact arrangement from the photograph. I stood in the doorway, the same doorway, and I watched my wife put the last stem in and step back and say, "I found this at the market. Isn't it pretty?" And I said, "Yes, it's pretty." And I did not tell her. I did not tell her because how do you tell someone that? How do you hand your wife a photograph of a dead woman standing in your kitchen and say, "She's coming. She's been getting closer for 8 months. She's in our home now. She wants something." And I think what she wants is for you not to be here anymore. I didn't tell her. I should have told her. Last Thursday, Hannah took a photo of us. Just the two of us on the couch. The easy, ordinary intimacy of a weeknight evening. She held the camera out, and we leaned together, and she clicked. She showed me the photo immediately after, still on the camera, the screen facing me. I looked at it for a long time. We are on the couch. We are smiling. Hannah looks exactly like herself. I look exactly like myself. Reina is standing directly behind the couch, one hand resting on Hannah's shoulder, face turned down toward Hannah with that expression, that deciding expression, and her other hand is raised, and her fingers are in Hannah's hair, and Hannah cannot see any of this, and is smiling at the camera completely unaware. This is the photograph I am looking at right now. This is the photograph that made me get out of bed at 3 a.m. and start writing, because I have seen every stage of this progression. I have watched her go from a smear of light at the edge of a frame to a face in a doorway to a hand in my wife's hair. I have watched her get closer and more solid and more present and more deliberate over 8 months. And I have seen what the photographs show before it happens. The vase was in the photographs 3 weeks before he was in my kitchen. I need you to understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that the photograph I'm looking at right now, Reina standing behind my wife with her hand in Hannah's hair, and that expression on her face is not showing me what is happening. It is showing me what is going to happen. And I do not know how long I have before it does. I have been sitting here for 2 hours, trying to decide what to do. I have thought about telling Hannah everything. I have thought about leaving, taking Hannah, somewhere, anywhere, away from whatever this is. I have thought about whether there is someone who deals with this, some person or practice or ritual that addresses what it means when the dead decide they are not finished. Here is what I keep coming back to. Reina loved completely, totally, without halfway. It was the thing that made her impossible to be with, and it was also the truest thing about her. And I am standing in the middle of the night holding a photograph of that love, turned into something that wants my wife gone, and I feel, underneath all the fear, underneath all the desperation, I feel the specific grief of understanding that she never stopped. She never stopped loving me. she just stopped being alive. And whatever she is now, whatever exists in the space between the lens and the light, it has been moving toward me for 8 months, with the same totality it always had, the same completeness, the same inability to accept less than everything. I don't know how to fight that. I don't know if it can be fought. I am going to wake Hana up in a few minutes. I am going to tell her I love her. I am not going to tell her why. I need to say it at 3 a.m. because she will ask questions I cannot answer. Tomorrow, I am going to figure out what to do. Tonight, I'm going to sit here and look at the photograph and try to memorize my wife's face the way it looks right now, smiling, unaware, completely herself before whatever comes next. I need her to stay exactly like this. I need her to stay. One of my least favorite parts about being a middle school history teacher is the bullshit living history assignments we give at the end of every school year. Kids are supposed to sit with their grandparents and videotape, voice record, or transcribe their oldest memories for posterity and for an easy way to bring up their GPA. I've been doing this for 17 years, and when I collected the projects this time around, I assumed they would be as dull, if not duller, than usual. This had not been a particularly bright class. So, I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and prepared for a long night of, I only owned 2 pairs of pants when I was your age, and my brother got beat with a newspaper for hitting a baseball into a neighbor's yard. And, of course, these projects were peppered with innocent, old person comments that were so horribly sexist and racist you just had to laugh. Now, I had a girl in my class whom I will call Olivia. She was pudgy, quiet, and proved herself a consistent B student. I expected her project to be as unremarkable as her, and perhaps that's why I was so profoundly disturbed by what I witnessed that night. Olivia has submitted 2 discs for some reason, so I began with the one marked Interview. My screen hiccuped twice before a grainy image of a living room came into view. The place was a hoarder's hell. Olivia was curled up in an armchair, clutching a notebook and looking like a scared animal. Across from her sat a man with a somber countenance, smoking a cigarette and staring at her expectantly. "Go ahead," a woman's voice whispered from behind the camera. Olivia's owlish eyes flashed towards the screen, then back to the man. "I'm here with my great-uncle Stephen," she began, almost inaudibly. "He is going to tell us about his oldest memories from being in the army." Great-uncle Stephen looked like he'd rather be in a goddamn trench at the moment, but he waited patiently for the questions to begin. Not surprisingly, Olivia read verbatim from the suggested questions sheet I had handed out to the students. He answered her curtly. Once or twice I heard her mother whisper, "Speak up, Olivia," from behind the camera. Typical boring shit. So I was intrigued when Olivia set down the notebook and asked, "Did you like being in the army?" That was totally off script. Great-uncle Stephen emitted a chain smoker's wheeze. "Nope. Glad to get out of my town, though. Where did you go?" "Balkans." "Uh-huh," she said. I doubted she knew what the Balkans were, and my suspicion was confirmed when she asked, "Was Balkans very different from here?" "Yes." Mom cleared her throat from behind the camera, perhaps encouraging Great-uncle Stephen to be a little more forthcoming. But Olivia seemed genuinely interested. "Uncle Stephen," she asked, "what is your very worst memory from the army?" The old man crushed his cigarette in the ashtray, and then slowly lifted himself out of his chair. "I'll be back," he mumbled. The camera cut off. When the screen flashed back on, everything was the same, except Great Uncle Stephen had several pieces of paper in plastic sleeves laid atop all the crap sitting on his coffee table. One he held in his hand. "I was a kid when I enlisted," he said, looking at Olivia. "Your brother's age," he told her. Olivia nodded. "I never saw combat. Both of my deployments were to cities in Eastern Europe that had been destroyed by civil wars. Everything was a mess. I felt like a janitor for fuck's saw." "Ahem," Mom coughed. Great Uncle Stephen sighed and looked at his paper. "My unit was assigned to a school that had been obliterated by all the violence. Broken windows, caved-in rooms, and for some reason, the part that got to me the most was that the school had been like this for years before we got there. No one had lifted a finger to fix it. I saw kids walk by it, on their way to go beg for money or whatever shit they did. The camera dipped towards the floor as I heard a mom whisper harshly at Great Uncle Stephen. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it wasn't hard to imagine. "Do you want to hear this goddamn story or not?" I heard him bark in response. "Then you better let me tell it how I want." "Mom," Olivia chimed, "please stop interrupting. Are you presenting this in front of the class?" "No, Mom. We're just handing it in to the teacher. I'm sure he's heard the word shit before." Great Uncle Stephen contributed helpfully. I wasn't a he, as a matter of fact, but other than that, the statement was accurate. The camera was lifted, and after a couple of blurry focus adjustments, the shot was the same as before. I'm talking too much anyway," he grumbled. He lifted the piece of paper in his hand close to his face. "In the basement, I found this letter. I didn't know what it said, but I had a buddy of mine translate it. So, I'm gonna read it now. And then I'll tell you what I saw in that basement." A chill ran down my spine. Mom zoomed in to Great Uncle Stephen and his letter. His palsied hands trembled as he held up the paper. This is what he read. "Dear Sir, I never loved my country. So many of these skirmishes are born from patriotism, a power struggle for the shards of a once great empire. But I do not care what name my home has on the map. This fighting is senseless, and I stay as far away from it as I can. It was not these attacks and disorganized violence that took the lives of my wife and child. It was illness. Mercifully, it happened quickly for the baby. Nadja suffered for longer. I watched in horror, knowing I could do nothing for them. My only solace is that I was there for them every step of the way. I stopped going to work one day, and no one came after me. I doubt they noticed I was gone. Since the school was simply across a field, visible from my window, it would have been easy to go for a few hours each day and come home quickly to care for them. But what was the point? All I did was clean floors. I was as useless to the world as I was to my family. I tried to take Nadja to the hospital, but the journey was too long and taxing. I brought her home, and she died that night. After Nadja and the baby were gone, well, I don't remember much. I didn't leave my hovel, barely ate and slept. Thought many times of taking my own life. Tempting though it was, I felt paralyzed by my own helplessness. The one thing that kept me sane was my radio. I never turned it off once, even though I didn't listen to the words being said. In fact, the channel I got the clearest was in English, I think which I don't speak a lick of. But the voices, the music, and the true knowledge that life existed beyond this violent city sustained me. I have no idea how long passed before I saw the light of day again. I was dizzy from hunger, so finding food was my priority. My radio came with me, of course. Since I first holed myself up, it has gone everywhere with me. It talks to me as I sleep and as I wake. I don't know what it's saying, but I know I would die without it. Once I had some water and food, it occurred to me that the only thing left to do was go back to work. So, I did. The following morning, I simply returned to the school where I was a janitor and got back to work. Nobody made a big deal out of it. Like I said, Nadia had been sick for a long time, and those who worked at the school knew it. I appreciate that no one had pestered me to come back to work during the hardest days of my life. The teachers never said much to me, but we smiled at each other in the halls, and that mutual respect was perhaps the reason I decided to come back at all. The place had gone to the dogs without me, so I simply grabbed my broom and rags from my closet and set to cleaning. Everyone is grateful to have me back, I know. And the best part is that nobody minds my radio. I bring it with me everywhere and keep the volume low enough not to disrupt the students. No one has ever complained. In fact, I suspect they like it. The schoolhouse is not very big, but does require a lot of maintenance. The floors are always sticky and stained, so I spend most of my time mopping. Kids make messes. I guess that's why I'm still in business. Sometimes I have to move things around to make sure I get every spot on the floor beautiful and clean, but I take pride in that. And the repairs. The school always needs tune-ups here and there, and I am happy to help. Some days I'm reconstructing a desk that broke as I whistle along with the radio. Other times I handle more serious structural issues. Days when I have work like this, I feel truly instrumental, like a cog in a larger machine. How could this school survive without me? It took me a long time, but I once again feel that I have purpose. There is a larder behind the school that is full of preserved food. In lieu of payment, I am allowed to take as much food as I need. That arrangement is fine. What would I do with money anyway? I used to bring the food back to my home, just one field away from the school, but when I started sleeping in the basement, no one seemed to notice. This school is special to me, and I cannot leave it unguarded. When I am besieged with memories of my wife and baby, I turn up the volume on the radio to drown out such thoughts. It works for me every time, except this morning. Because this morning, I woke up to dead silence. I frantically examined the radio to see what had happened. I honestly cannot tell you how many days in a row I have been using it. Did it simply live out its life and die naturally? I have spent the entire day trying to fix it. Most of this time, I have been crying. I am losing my mind without it. I have given myself until sundown. If I cannot fix it by then, I am going to take my life. I am writing this because the sunlight is starting to die, and I know what my fate shall be. I have thought about taking one last walk through the halls of my school, saying goodbye to the students and teachers. I know I will be missed, but I cannot bring myself to leave this room. I cannot go anywhere knowing that my radio is dead here. There are no more tears in me. It feels now like I can't catch my breath. I vomited what little food I had in my stomach, and I am growing dizzy again, like I did after Nadia died. I am not long for this world, but before I take my life, I have closed the door to this room and stuck a chair beneath the handle. It is the only room in the basement and has a small casement that lets in just enough light for me to see what I am doing. If anyone is kind enough to come looking for me, they should not be met with this gruesome sight. Perhaps they will see the door is blocked, smell my rotting body, and simply forget I ever existed. But I have placed both my radio and this note outside the door. Kind sir, if you are reading this, I have one humble request. Please, fix it. Save my radio. It did not deserve to die in its sleep, and I am ashamed that I cannot revive it. Now I am ready to join Nadia and little Ludmila in heaven. I hope this school can find another janitor who loves and cares for it the way I do. The hour is now. Do not forget my radio. Stanislaw. When Mom zoomed back out, Olivia had tears in her eyes. Thank you for sharing, Uncle Stephen, Mom said. Her voice choked. I think we have enough. Wait. Olivia chirped. "You said there's more. What did you find?" Before Great Uncle Stephen could open his mouth, the image disappeared. My jaw dropped. Was that it? What did Great Uncle Stephen see? I promptly remembered that there was a second disc. This one was unmarked, but I hoped it contained the rest of the interview. There was no video, only audio. The voice that started up was Olivia's. "Hi, Miss Garrity. I'm sorry about my mom, but she refused to record the rest of what my uncle was saying. But I asked him to continue and secretly recorded the story as a voice memo on my phone. I remember you said earlier this year that history is written by the people who win wars." She sucked in a breath and commenced crying. "But everyone's history is important, even if they are sad, pathetic people, and even if they never won a single thing in their life. I haven't slept through the night since I finished this project, but you have to hear what my uncle has to say." There were tears in my eyes, too. The sincerity of her words was beautiful. I was also flattered that she had remembered some trite phrase I threw around because it was what my history teacher said to me. Before I got too sappy over it, the audio began again. "Fine," came Mom's frustrated voice. "If you want to hear the rest of the story, fine, but this is not appropriate for a school project." "Let me finish," Great Uncle Stephen snapped. "If it's too much for you, help yourself to a snack in the kitchen." But Olivia wants to know what happened. I heard her mother mumble something and walk away. Olivia and her uncle were alone. I imagine her looking at him expectantly. "So, did you find the radio? Or did it get ruined when the school got blown up?" He rasped, and I heard the distinct click of a lighter. "That letter," he began slowly, "had a date on it." "What date?" she inquired hungrily. "It was dated 2 weeks before we started rebuilding the school. Didn't you say the school had been destroyed like 2 years ago?" "Yes," replied Great Uncle Stephen. "It had been." There was silence as I felt goosebumps on my arms. The images that came to my mind were almost too overwhelming to express. But Great Uncle Stephen put them into words effortlessly. Clearly, he had spent his whole life thinking about it. This man, this Stanislav, went to a vandalized, falling apart schoolhouse and cleaned up blood and rubble like it was spilled drinks and dust. He smiled at dead bodies in the hallway and believed they were smiling back at him because they liked his radio. He moved around corpses so he could sweep the ground under them. The roof was half collapsed, so when it rained, he must have gotten soaking wet, but was so oblivious that he didn't even feel a thing. I could hear Olivia crying steadily. I found the larder he was talking about. It was all pickled, preserved food that probably tasted like shit. Most of the stuff was moldy. Did you see the dead body? Yes. Hanging from the ceiling, but still amazingly lifelike. He wasn't rotting away. This hadn't happened years ago. Did he look peaceful? She asked, a chord of desperation in her voice. Couldn't tell you. The smell was rank, and his face was blue, and his eyes were bulging, like this. I imagined him demonstrating. And the radio? Olivia wept. I heard Great Uncle Stephen take a long drag of his cigarette. It was there, all right, and it was still on.